They said I'd never amount to anything. Now they work for me. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I'm sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor, watching the city sprawl beneath me like a circuit board come to life, when my assistant knocks. Mr. Chen, the 2 p.m. interviews are here. I almost laugh. If only she knew that 15 years ago, I was the kid who got laughed out of job interviews before they even started. Send them in. 3 candidates walk through my door and I recognize 2 of them immediately. My chest tightens, not with fear this time, but with something else entirely. Recognition. Vindication. Maybe a little of that old anger too. Marcus Thompson. Tall, broad-shouldered, still carrying himself like he owns every room he enters. Behind him, Sarah Whitfield, her blonde hair perfectly styled, that same condescending smile she wore when she told me I'd never understand how the real world works. They don't recognize me. Why would they? The last time they saw me, I was 90 pounds soaking wet, hiding behind thick glasses and a hoodie 3 sizes too big. Please, have a seat. I gesture to the chairs across from my desk, the same tone I've used with Fortune 500 CEOs and venture capitalists. Calm, professional, in control. Marcus extends his hand first. Marcus Thompson, looking forward to discussing the senior developer position. I shake it, my grip firm now, calloused from years of late-night coding and relentless ambition. David Chen, CEO and founder. Sarah's eyes flicker with something, maybe confusion, maybe the first stirring of recognition. But she's still wearing that smile, the one that says she's doing me a favor by being here. I have to say, she begins, settling into her chair like she's granting an audience. When I heard about next-gen solutions, I was impressed. For such a young company to be making waves in enterprise software, well, it takes real vision. The irony isn't lost on me. This is the same woman who 12 years ago stood in front of our computer science class and announced that I'd never make it in tech because I didn't have the personality for it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. Riverside High School, 2012. I was 15 and invisible, which was honestly a blessing most days. Being noticed at Riverside meant becoming a target, and I had enough problems without adding social persecution to the mix. My family lived in the Willows, the part of town where the streetlights worked half the time, and the corner store sold more lottery tickets than groceries. Dad worked double shifts at the plant when they'd have him, which wasn't often enough. Mom cleaned houses for families who lived in neighborhoods we couldn't afford to drive through. They did their best, but their best didn't include understanding why their youngest son spent every free moment hunched over a second-hand laptop, typing lines of code instead of throwing footballs or chasing girls. David's got his head in the clouds again, Mom would say when relatives visited, like my programming was some cute phase I'd grow out of. Maybe he'll be an accountant someday. The laptop was a Dell from 2006 that my Uncle Tony gave me when he upgraded. Half the keys stuck, the screen flickered when it got warm, and it took 3 minutes just to boot up. But it was mine. And on that machine, I built my first website, wrote my first program, discovered that I could create entire worlds with nothing but logic and imagination. At school, I was David the Geek Chen to most people, when they bothered to call me anything at all. I ate lunch alone in the computer lab, which was fine by me. The lab teacher, Mr. Peterson, was the only adult who seemed to understand that what I was doing mattered. "You've got something special here, David," he'd say, reviewing the little games and utilities I'd coded. "Don't let anyone tell you different." But plenty of people tried. Marcus Thompson was the golden boy. Star quarterback, class president, the kind of guy who'd be successful at whatever he touched because the world was designed for people like him. He wasn't particularly cruel, just casually dismissive in the way that popular kids often are. "Hey, Chen," he'd call out when he passed my desk. "Building the next Facebook over there?" His friends would snicker, and I'd shrink a little deeper into my hoodie. The worst was Mrs. Rodriguez, my AP English teacher. She had this way of looking at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve, and not in a good way. "David," she said one day after class, "you need to think about realistic career paths. Not everyone can be Bill Gates." I'd just shown her a prototype for a web application that could help students track their assignments and grades. It was crude, but it worked, and I was proud of it. Have you considered community college? Maybe something in computer repair? Computer repair. Like I was some kid who wanted to fix laptops at Best Buy for the rest of my life. But the real gut punch came from my own family. Thanksgiving 2012. The whole extended family crammed into our tiny living room, the adults talking over each other while football played on our ancient television. My cousin Jake, 2 years older and fresh out of community college with a certificate in automotive technology, was the success story of the moment. "Jake's got a real future," Uncle Tony announced, clapping my cousin on the back. "Good, honest work, reliable. Not like these kids today with their heads in the computers." I was sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch trying to disappear. But my Aunt Linda noticed me. "What about you, David? Still playing with those computer games?" "He's not playing games," Mom said, but her tone was defensive, like she was making excuses. "He's learning programming." Uncle Tony laughed. "Programming? Listen to that. Kid thinks he's going to be the next Steve Jobs." "It's not like that," I started, but my voice came out small and weak. "Son," Uncle Tony leaned forward, beer breath and condescension. "Let me give you some advice. Guys like us, we work with our hands. We fix things, build things. That computer stuff? That's for rich kids who went to fancy schools. You need to find something practical." My older brother Danny, who'd been quiet up until then, decided to pile on. "David's always been in his own little world. Remember when he thought he was going to be a video game designer?" He laughed, and the sound cut through me. "Now it's websites. Next month it'll be something else." "I made $1,000 last month," I said quietly. The room went silent. Too silent. "What was that?" Dad asked. "I made $1,000, freelancing, building websites for small businesses." Uncle Tony snorted. "Bullshit. Language, Tony," Mom warned. But she was looking at me with skepticism too. "I'm serious. Mrs. Patterson at the flower shop hired me to build her website. Then she referred me to her friend who owns a bakery. Then the bakery owner told his brother-in-law. Where's the money then?" Danny challenged. I pulled out my phone and showed them my PayPal balance. $247.83. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Uncle Tony shook his head. "That's not real money, kid. That's beer money. You think you can support a family on that? Pay a mortgage? You need a real job." But I saw something else in his eyes. Surprise. Maybe even a flicker of respect. It was gone in a second, buried under years of his own unfulfilled dreams and disappointments. But I caught it. The conversation moved on, but I stayed on that floor, burning with something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just anger. It was determination crystallizing into something harder, more focused. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. working on a new project. A platform that would let small businesses manage their entire online presence. Website, social media, customer database, everything. I called it Local Link. Senior year brought the college application process, and with it, a new round of people telling me what I couldn't do. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Brennan, was particularly helpful in crushing whatever dreams I had left. "David, I've looked at your transcripts, and while your grades are adequate, I think we need to be realistic about your options." She slid a brochure across her desk. Riverside Community College has an excellent information technology program. 2 years, very practical, and you'd be close to home. "What about Stanford?" I asked. "Or MIT? I've been teaching myself advanced algorithms. I've built several applications that are already generating revenue." Mrs. Brennan smiled the way adults smile at children who believe in Santa Claus. "Those schools are extremely competitive, David. They're looking for well-rounded students, leadership experience, extracurricular activities, students who can contribute to their campus communities." What she meant was students who weren't poor, awkward kids from the wrong side of town. My applications show that I've been freelancing since I was 14. that I've built software used by dozens of local businesses. That's nice, honey, but it's not the same as real leadership experience. Have you considered joining the chess club? It might help round out your application. I didn't tell her that I'd already applied to 12 schools, including Stanford and MIT. I didn't tell her that I'd written essays about growing up in the Willows, about watching my parents work themselves to exhaustion, about discovering that code could be poetry, and that with enough determination, you could build something from nothing. I definitely didn't tell her about the acceptance letter I'd already received. The night I got into Stanford with a partial scholarship, I sat in my room staring at the email for 2 hours. The numbers were still daunting. Even with financial aid, I'd need to take out massive loans, work part-time, live on ramen, and determination. But it was possible. I ran downstairs to tell my parents. They were watching TV, Dad still in his work clothes, Mom with her feet up for the first time all day. I got in, I said, holding up my laptop. Got in where? Mom asked, not looking away from the screen. Stanford. I got into Stanford. Dad turned to look at me then, really look at me. Stanford University? Full ride? Mom asked. Partial scholarship. I'll need loans for the rest, but I can work. How much in loans? Dad's voice was flat. I told them. The number hung in the air like smoke. David, Mom said gently, that's a lot of money. More than we make in 2 years. I know it sounds scary, but... Scary? Dad stood up. Son, that's not scary. That's impossible. We can't co-sign loans like that. What if something happens? What if you don't graduate? What if you can't find a job? Dad, it's Stanford. Stanford graduates don't struggle to find jobs. Sashamastan. Rich Stanford graduates don't struggle to find jobs, he corrected. Kids like us? We're starting from behind, and if we fall, there's no safety net. The conversation went in circles for an hour. They weren't being malicious. They were being practical, protective, terrified of debt that could destroy our family. But every word felt like a door slamming shut. Community college first, Mom finally said. 2 years, save some money, then we'll see about transferring. I nodded and said I understood because what else could I do? But that night, lying in my twin bed listening to sirens and shouting from the street, I made a decision. I was going to Stanford, with or without their help. I deferred my admission for a year and went into hyperdrive. I took my freelance business seriously, treating it like the startup it was becoming. Local Link was growing. I had 37 small business clients by graduation, all paying monthly fees for my platform. But I also had to deal with the daily humiliation of staying behind while my classmates moved on. Still here, Chen? Marcus asked when he came back for winter break, all smiles and casual cruelty. He was at State on a football scholarship, already talking about his internship with his dad's friend's company. Still here, I confirmed, sitting in our old computer lab, working on code while he visited his favorite teachers. That's too bad, man. I thought you were going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or something. Sarah was worse. She'd gotten into UCLA and made sure everyone knew it. When she saw me at the grocery store where I'd picked up a part-time job to supplement my programming income, she actually looked embarrassed for me. Oh, David, hi. She glanced around like she was afraid someone might see her talking to me. Are you working here now? Part-time, I said, continuing to stock shelves, while I build my business. Business? She laughed, not meanly, but not kindly either. That's cute. Well, good for you for being entrepreneurial. The way she said entrepreneurial made it sound like a participation trophy. But the worst was still at home. Danny had moved back after dropping out of State, his second college attempt, and he made sure to remind me daily that I was wasting my potential. You could have gone to community college like a normal person, he said one morning while I worked at the kitchen table, coffee growing cold as I debugged a payment processing system. Instead, you're sitting here playing pretend CEO. I made $4,000 last month, I said, without looking up. $4,000 isn't a career, David. It's a side hustle. He wasn't wrong. $4,000 was good money for an 18-year-old, but it wasn't Stanford money. It wasn't escape velocity money. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. Instead of going to Stanford that fall, I took every penny I'd saved and every client I'd built and bet it all on myself. I moved out of my parents' house and into a studio apartment that was basically a closet with a window. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for 6 months straight. I worked 18-hour days, building LocalLink into something bigger, something scalable. The first year was hell. Clients disappeared when they found cheaper alternatives. A major update broke half my code base and took 3 weeks to fix. I got sick from stress and poor nutrition and couldn't afford to see a doctor. But I also landed my first enterprise client, a chain of auto shops that needed a unified system for managing inventory across 12 locations. That contract paid more than I'd made in the previous 6 months combined. Year 2 was when things started clicking. I hired my first employee, Jenny, a designer I'd met in an online forum who was as hungry as I was. We worked out of my apartment, which was barely big enough for 2 desks, but we were building something real. By year 3, I had 7 employees and an actual office. A small one, but with windows and everything. Local tech blogs started writing about us. We won a Rising Star Award from the Regional Business Council. My parents still didn't really understand what I did, but they stopped asking when I was going to get a real job. Danny stopped asking too, especially after I helped him pay off his credit card debt without him asking for it. Year 4 was the breakthrough. A major retail corporation was looking for a unified platform to manage their digital presence across 400 locations. They'd been working with a big consulting firm that had burned through 18 months and $2 million without delivering anything functional. Their CTO, desperate and out of options, found us through a recommendation from one of our smaller clients. The meeting was at their headquarters in downtown. Glass towers, marble lobbies, the whole intimidating corporate theater. I walked in wearing my best suit, my only suit actually, carrying a laptop and a thumb drive with our demo. 45 minutes later, I walked out with a letter of intent for a $3.2 million contract. That's when I knew I'd made it. Not because of the money, although the money was life-changing, but because I'd walked into a room full of executives and proven that the weird kid from the Willows could solve problems they couldn't. Which brings me to today. NextGen Solutions now employs 63 people. We've got clients in 14 states and 2 countries. Our software runs the digital operations for everyone from mom-and-pop restaurants to regional hospital networks. And Marcus Thompson wants to work for me. So, David, Marcus says, settling back in his chair with the confidence of someone who's never doubted his place in the world. I've been following NextGen's trajectory and I'm impressed. Really impressed. He's wearing an expensive suit and a watch that costs more than I used to make in 3 months. Success has been kind to him, but it's the expected kind of success, the kind that flows naturally from privilege and connections. I think I could bring a lot to your team, he continues. I've got 8 years at Hartwell Associates, team leadership experience, client relationship management. I know how to work with high-value accounts. Sarah nods along. And I've been specializing in growth strategy for mid-sized companies. I think what you've built here is remarkable, but there's so much potential to scale. You need someone who understands how to take a company from where you are to where you want to be. Where I want to be. As if they have any idea where that is. I lean back in my chair, a Herman Miller piece that cost more than my entire setup when I started, and study them. They're good at this, I'll give them that. Confident, articulate, selling themselves with the polish that comes from never having to doubt your worth. Tell me, I say, what do you know about NextGen's founding story? Marcus brightens. Well, I know you started the company about 5 years ago, right? Fresh out of college, probably, with a vision for streamlining business operations through integrated software solutions. Actually, I say, I never went to college. That stops them. Sarah's smile falters just slightly. I founded this company when I was 19, working out of a studio apartment that was smaller than this office. I taught myself everything I know about programming, business development, and client relations through trial and error, and more 18-hour days than I care to remember. I pull up our company timeline on the wall monitor. Year 1, it was just me and a laptop that should have been in a museum. Year 2, I brought on my first employee. Year 3, we hit our first $1 million in revenue. The numbers speak for themselves, but I can see in their faces that they're recalculating, trying to fit this new information into their existing assumptions about who I am and how success is supposed to work. That's incredible, Sarah says, and for the first time, her admiration sounds genuine. Self-taught entrepreneurship at that level is really rare. It is, I agree, especially for kids who grow up being told they'll never amount to anything. Now I have their full attention. See, I went to Riverside High, class of 2013. I was the weird kid who spent lunch periods in the computer lab instead of the cafeteria. I wore the same 3 hoodies in rotation because my family couldn't afford a wardrobe, and I carried my projects around on a thumb drive because I couldn't afford cloud storage. Marcus's face is changing, confusion shifting towards something that might be recognition. I was the kid who got laughed at for suggesting that local businesses needed better digital infrastructure. Who got told by teachers that I should focus on realistic career paths. Who watched classmates get opportunities I couldn't even dream of because I didn't have the right connections or the right background. Sarah's professional composure is cracking. I can see her mind working, trying to place me in her memory of high school. David Chen, I say, taking off my glasses and cleaning them slowly. Computer lab. Senior year presentation about digital transformation for small businesses. You said I was living in a fantasy world, and that real business happens in the real world, not on computers. The recognition hits her like a physical blow. Her face goes pale, then red. Marcus is staring at me like I'm a ghost. Holy shit. David Chen. You're that David Chen? I'm that David Chen. The silence stretches out. I can hear the city humming through the windows, the sound of traffic and construction and 10 million people chasing their own versions of success. Sarah starts, then stops. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I tell her. You're both clearly qualified for the positions you're applying for. Your resumes are impressive. Your references check out. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the view I've earned. But I need to ask you something, and I need honest answers. Not the answers you think I want to hear, but the truth. I turn back to face them. If you saw that weird kid from high school today, 15 years old, awkward, working on some crazy project that nobody understood, what would you tell him? Marcus opens his mouth, then closes it. He's struggling, and I can see why. The easy answer is to say something supportive, something about believing in dreams and working hard. But we all know that's not what he would have said back then. It's not what any of them said. Sarah answers first. I would tell him. I would tell him that I was wrong. Her voice is quiet, stripped of its professional polish. I was 17, and I thought I knew everything about how the world worked. I thought success looked like one thing. Like what my parents had, like what I saw on TV. I couldn't imagine that someone could build something real and valuable in ways I'd never seen before. She looks directly at me. I was small-minded and cruel, and I'm sorry. Marcus nods slowly. Yeah, same. I was a shit to a lot of people in high school, but I justified it because I thought there was some natural hierarchy, you know? Like some people were destined for success and others weren't. I never imagined that the quiet kid in the corner might be building something incredible that the rest of us couldn't even see. I study their faces. They're not the same people they were in high school. None of us are. Success and failure, time and experience, they change people. Sometimes for the better. Here's the thing, I say, returning to my desk. I could hire either of you. You're both talented, experienced, and you'd probably do excellent work. But I need to know that you understand what this company represents. I gesture around the office, at the awards on the walls, the photos of our team, the whiteboards covered with product roadmaps and growth projections. This isn't just a business. It's proof that the kids who get written off, who get told they're not leadership material, or they're too weird, or they don't have the right background, those kids can build something that matters, that they can solve problems and create value, and yes, become leaders. I sit back down. Every person I hire here, I need to know they understand that. I need to know they see potential where others see problems. I need to know they won't write someone off because they don't fit the expected mold. Marcus leans forward. You're asking if we've learned from our mistakes. I'm asking if you'd recognize the next David Chen if he walked through your door. And more importantly, if you'd be willing to bet on him. The third candidate, who's been silent through this entire exchange, finally speaks up. I'm sorry, but I'm a little confused. Should I come back later? I'd almost forgotten about him. James Morrison, according to his resume. Fresh out of college, no real experience, but his portfolio showed promise. No, please stay. Actually, this is perfect. I look at Marcus and Sarah. James here reminds me a lot of myself at his age. Talented, but unproven. Ideas that might seem crazy to people who've been in the industry for a while. What's your first impression of him? It's a test, and they know it. Sarah considers carefully. He's young, obviously, but the work in his portfolio shows real creativity. The user interface designs are intuitive, and he's clearly put thought into user experience. Marcus nods. I was looking at his personal projects. That app he built for coordinating volunteer work? It's simple, but it solves a real problem elegantly. That's harder than it looks. James beams, probably not understanding the subtext, but appreciating the praise. Good answers, I say. Because here's what I've learned in building this company. The people who've surprised me the most, who've exceeded every expectation, who've come up with solutions I never would have thought of, they're usually the ones who look like long shots on paper. I think about Jenny, my first hire, who'd been bouncing between freelance gigs because no one would give her a chance at a real design role. About Michael, our lead developer, who learned to code in prison and couldn't get interviews anywhere else. About Lisa, our VP of operations, who'd been a single mom managing a grocery store before I convinced her that her organizational skills were exactly what a growing tech company needed. The people who've disappointed me are usually the ones with perfect resumes and impeccable credentials who couldn't see past their own assumptions about how things should work. Marcus and Sarah exchange a look. They're starting to understand that this isn't just a job interview anymore. So here's my offer, I continue. Marcus, I'll hire you as a senior developer, but you'll be working under Jenny, my head of design who never finished college but has an intuitive understanding of user experience that I've never seen matched. Sarah, I've got a role in business development, but you'll be learning our approach from the ground up, starting with our smallest clients and working your way up as you prove you understand what we're building here. I pause. Or you can walk away. I won't hold it against you. This isn't the kind of place where experience automatically equals authority, where your degree determines your ceiling, or where playing politics matters more than solving problems. If that's not the environment you want to work in, it's better that we figure that out now. Marcus doesn't hesitate. I want the job. Sarah takes longer to answer, and I can see her wrestling with the idea of starting over, of admitting that maybe she has things to learn from people she once dismissed. I want to understand, she finally says. I want to understand how you built this, and I want to be part of what you're building next. Good. I turn to James. And you? How would you feel about working with people who have more traditional experience but might not always understand your perspective? He grins. I'd feel at home. 3 months later, I'm watching Marcus explain our codebase to a new junior developer, a kid named Alex, who reminds me painfully of my younger self. Quiet, brilliant, completely overlooked by everyone who should have noticed his potential. Marcus is patient, encouraging, asking the right questions. He's learned to see past the surface, to recognize that talent doesn't always package itself the way we expect. Sarah has thrown herself into understanding our client base with an intensity that surprised me. She spends her days talking to small business owners, really listening to their challenges, coming back with insights that our team has used to improve our platform in ways I hadn't considered. But more than that, she's become an advocate. Last week, she fought for an hour to convince a potential client that working with us, a relatively small company, would serve them better than going with one of the big consulting firms. They'll charge you 3 times as much and deliver half the value, she told them. Trust me, I used to think bigger was always better. I was wrong. James is flourishing in ways that don't surprise me, but seem to amaze everyone else. He's not just coding. He's thinking about problems differently, approaching challenges from angles that our more experienced developers miss. Yesterday, he solved a performance issue that had been stumping our senior team for weeks. His solution was elegant, simple, and completely obvious once he explained it. Where did that come from? Marcus asked him. I don't know, James shrugged. I just looked at it differently. That's the thing about underestimation. When you've been overlooked your whole life, you learn to see opportunities that others miss. You learn to find solutions in places where people aren't looking. The annual Riverside High reunion is next month. I got the invitation 3 weeks ago, forwarded to my office address. The theme is then and now. How perfect is that? I probably won't go. Not because I'm afraid or bitter, but because I don't need to. The 17-year-old me would have fantasized about walking into that gymnasium in an expensive suit, business cards in hand, ready to show everyone who'd written me off exactly how wrong they'd been. But the 30-year-old me understands something that 17-year-old me didn't. The best revenge isn't showing up to prove you've made it. The best revenge is building something so meaningful that proving anything to anyone becomes irrelevant. Mrs. Rodriguez retired 5 years ago, but she sent me a LinkedIn message last year. Apparently, she'd been following NextGen's growth and wanted to congratulate me. I always knew you were special, she wrote, but I never imagined you'd achieve something like this. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with that message for a few days, remembering the teenager who'd been told to consider computer repair, who'd been dismissed as unrealistic for believing in his own potential. When I finally wrote back, I kept it simple. Thank you for reaching out. I hope you're enjoying your retirement. Because what else is there to say? That her lack of faith had driven me to work harder? That her low expectations had become fuel for my determination? That every time someone told me I wasn't capable of something, I'd added it to a mental list of things to prove wrong? All of that would be true, but it would also miss the point. The point isn't that I succeeded despite their doubt. The point is that I succeeded because I stopped waiting for their approval. I think about this as I review the quarterly reports spread across my desk. Revenue up 47 year-over-year. Client retention at 94. Employee satisfaction scores that most companies would kill for. The numbers tell a story, but they're not the story I'm most proud of. The story I'm most proud of is Alex, the junior developer who reminds me of myself. 3 months ago, he was working at a call center, writing code in his spare time and dreaming of something bigger. Today, he's contributing to projects that serve millions of users. The story is Jenny, who's now our chief design officer and spoke at 3 industry conferences last year about user-centered design philosophy. The story is Michael, whose background meant he couldn't get hired anywhere else but who's now mentoring ex-felons who want to learn programming. The story is that we've built something that creates opportunities for people who might not get them elsewhere. My phone buzzes. Text from Marcus. Thanks again for taking a chance on me. Working here has reminded me what it feels like to be part of something meaningful. Another text, this one from Sarah. Coffee later? Want to run some ideas by you for the small business initiative. I smile and set the phone aside. The truth is, I did take a chance on them, but not for the reasons they think. I didn't hire them because I'm magnanimous or because I wanted to prove I was above old grudges. I hired them because I believe in second chances, because people can grow, because the best teams are built from people who understand what it feels like to be underestimated. And because, selfishly, I wanted to work with people who would never again look at a weird kid with big dreams and see anything other than potential. The sun is setting over the city, turning the windows of the surrounding buildings into mirrors of gold and crimson. In a few hours, I'll head home to my apartment. A real apartment now, with space and light and a view of the lake. I'll probably order takeout from the Thai place down the street, review tomorrow's product development meeting, maybe call my parents to see how they're doing. It's a quiet life, surprisingly so for someone who supposedly made it. But that's the thing about real success. It's not as flashy as you imagine it'll be when you're 17 and angry and determined to prove the world wrong. Real success is building something that matters. Creating jobs for people who need them. Solving problems that improve people's lives in small but meaningful ways. Real success is the text I got last week from Alex. My mom finally understands what I do for work. She told her friends her son is a computer engineer at a technology company. She's proud. Real success is knowing that the next weird kid who walks into my office with big dreams and no credentials will get a fair shot. Real success is not needing to go to the high school reunion because you've already built something better than vindication. You've built a future where kids like you don't have to choose between fitting in and pursuing their passions. Where talent gets recognized regardless of packaging. where the phrase, "you'll never amount to anything," becomes impossible to say with a straight face. I gather up my papers and shut down my computer. Marcus and Sarah will do fine here. They're learning to see what I learned to see years ago. That potential comes in unexpected forms, that the most valuable people are often the ones everyone else overlooks. That success isn't about proving you belong in existing systems, but about building better systems entirely. Outside, the city lights are starting to flicker on. Millions of people heading home after another day of building their own versions of the future. Some of them are kids sitting in computer labs right now, working on projects that their teachers think are silly, that their families don't understand, that their classmates dismiss. Some of them are being told they'll never amount to anything. I hope they don't listen. I hope they take that doubt and transform it into determination. I hope they learn, as I did, that the best way to prove people wrong isn't to become what they expected, but to become something they never imagined was possible. Because the truth is, they were right about one thing. I never did amount to anything. I amounted to everything.